They thought my blindness made me powerless, but as the HOA's self-proclaimed queen swung her gavel of absurdity, I realized just how fiercely I could fight back. Ready for a showdown? Before we begin today's deranged HOA story, tell me you haven't had your fill of irrational and power-grabbing HOA nonsense. Smash that like button to show you're on my side, and drop a comment if you've ever faced off against an overbearing homeowners association. Be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell, because this saga's only getting crazier from here. It was one of those gloriously sunny mornings where the neighborhood seemed to glimmer with tranquility. Birds chirped cheerfully, the smell of fresh grass wafted through the air, and there was me, in my cozy nook, ready to embrace whatever chaos would unfold next. Just then, a loud, unapologetic knock on my door shattered the serene ambiance like dropping a glass of milk on your brand new white rug. Naturally, I activated my smart home system, which in this instance was really just my voice yelling, "Hey Google, what's the situation?" The device dutifully alerted me about two figures approaching, both clad in some ridiculous mock HOA uniforms that could only be described as a terrible homage to misplaced authority. Honestly, if I could have seen their outfits, I would have envisioned a confluence of bad taste cop show reruns and a failed thrift store clearance sale. As they strutted down my driveway with all the pomp and circumstance of a pair of misguided peacocks, I couldn't help but channel my inner sarcastic commentator. Behold the champions of community conformity, I'd think, barely suppressing a giggle at their exaggerated swagger. Of course, the two buffoons had no idea I could hear their little snickers and whispers from my perch inside. Nothing screams, "I'm intimidated," like a pair of wannabe enforcers laughing about how many lawn ornaments my neighbor still had on display. Next, they'll demand we all throw an HOA prom, I muttered to myself. Yes, an extravagant gala where no one is allowed to wear anything outside the acceptable neighborhood palette. Imagine the utter horror of a bright cerulean tie in a sea of taupe. The absurdity was palpable, and I was beginning to enjoy the impending showdown. With my voice-activated notes rolling throughout my smart home, capturing every cringeworthy word these jokers uttered, I prepared myself for combat. Ding! A perfect setup. Just like that, the two knuckleheads knocked again, this time refusing to make eye contact, as if my blindness made me invisible. I leaned into my southern drawl accent I sometimes whipped out for fun and called out, "Oh please, come in! I've been waiting for my HOA appointment all week." I could practically hear the audible gulp from the taller of the two, a nervous laugh escaping him before he mustered up enough courage to rattle off their preposterous demands regarding my lawn. Apparently, they took great offense to my wildly libertine choice of letting the dandelions in my yard live their best life, right alongside the tufts of clovers that dared to coexist in beauty with vast patches of grass. "Dandelions are a scourge, sir." No, he didn't actually say that, but I could sense the zest for pest control bubbling beneath his shallow bravado. I leaned in closer to fully embrace the role of sassy neighbor in the know, choosing to illuminate their lives, if only for a moment, with sheer wit. "You mean to tell me that a flower which inspires childhood whimsy and accidental floral bouquets is now a neighborhood felon?" I quipped, letting my voice drape sarcasm like a cozy blanket over the command center of my living room. "And what's next? Are we going on an HOA-sponsored safari in search of runaway daisies?" The absurdity rolled off my tongue, and judging by their stupefied silence, I was hitting all the right notes. If there's one thing I've learned from battling various shades of entitlement wrapped in pristine blouses and tailored slacks, it's that you've got to keep your wits about you, especially when it comes to Gloria Whitmore, the self-proclaimed queen of our community. Oh, I could already sense her lurking somewhere in the shadows, thinking about how to dispatch these clowns on her behalf. I half imagined her orchestrating the operation from a throne draped in freshly sewn, HOA-approved fabric while holding a scepter fashioned from the latest HOA policy pamphlet. Perhaps that's how all this madness stems from. They feel so justified in forcing their regal decrees just to maintain the luxurious aura of their own self-importance. So I leaned on my tech guru, Samir, my trusty sidekick if you will, to put everything on record. Every petty Java-induced demand they uttered was captured in high definition, serving as documented proof that every HOA meeting held should come with a side of restraining order. As this perfect storm of nonsense brewed before me, I felt both outrage and exhilaration building like an impending thunderstorm. I wanted to make it clear. I, Jordan Marshall, a blind man, could see every ounce of their precarious overreach. So tell me, gentlemen, is there perhaps a seminar we residents missed on how to effectively mow our lawns? I purred, emboldened by my own wit. Do you hand out gold stars for proper petting zoo management next? The irony of their situation was ludicrous. Two grown men pretending they had dominion over my small patch of earth, armed only with a delusional perception of power and cheap costumes that might just be designed for circus clowns. Their collective dignity plummeted at each word I tossed like colorful beads of humor into the bleak and drab reality they brought into my life. I could almost smell the shame curdling into the air between them. It was mouthwatering. Who knew standing up for oneself could turn into such a high-stakes comedy routine? If someone would have told me the hilarity would reach explosion levels of absurdity, I might have signed up for this HOA mix-up sooner. So, why tiptoe through the garden of bland compliance when I could dance through the daisy fields of rebellion? Bring it on, Gloria, and your little wannabe enforcers. I was ready for everything you've got. Who knew negotiations with the HOA could be this entertaining? What's the next act in this unfolding absurd theater of entitled antics? Before I could truly bask in the glory of my burgeoning hilarity, an unexpected bonus character entered the stage. Gloria herself. I sensed the precise moment her aura of condescension burst into the room, even without those sharp green eyes piercing through me like I was a mere eyesore on her meticulously curated garden fence. "Jordan, dear, I couldn't help but notice some unsanctioned activity occurring at the front of your residence," she chimed, her voice dripping with that sickly sweetness one might encounter in a botched cake baked with too much plastic. "You know how I feel about proper decorum in our beloved cul-de-sac." Cue my internal eye roll. Her idea of decorum could probably drown a guy like me in a sea of pastel colors. How do I know this? I've heard her drone on like an authoritarian puppet about it at our last HOA gathering. It belonged on a reality show titled Mission Overmanage. With the grace of an inept ballet dancer, the two faux enforcers attempted to shrink in the shadow of their esteemed leader, but I wasn't having any of that. "Ah, look who brought her royal entourage." I didn't realize I was in the presence of such exquisite authority, I quipped sarcastically, savoring the mix of indignation and disbelief washing over them like hot fudge on a Sunday. If I'd known I needed an audience to defend my gnomes, I would have invited the whole neighborhood. But alas, I didn't want your presence to turn my garden into an HOA prison yard. The phrase unapproved garden gnome collection, plus Gloria, translated to "we're all doomed." But now, as her pristine exterior quivered under the weight of my mockery, I could practically hear the gears turning in her protective brain. How could she conquer this riddle wrapped in a conundrum wrapped in misfit HOAs? "Jordan?" Gloria began, her tone oscillating dangerously between faux concern and tightly controlled rage. "It's the principle of the matter. Our neighborhood thrives on a standard of excellence, and those gnomes of yours," she paused dramatically, "are a blight on our beautiful street." "Oh, the drama!" I could almost see the orchestra behind her, cueing the violins to score this riveting tale of my gardening rebellion. "Impact on property values?" I countered. "Oh yes, because my gnomes are clearly the leading cause of homes gloriously plummeting into oblivion." But soon the tension escalated as Fake Badge Bob, emboldened by Gloria's presence, bumbled forward and attempted to assert his faux authority. "We could discuss some fines," he muttered, the words fumbling out like a toddler learning to walk. "And here we are," I astonishingly exclaimed, my voice colored with unfiltered disbelief. "The grand unveiling of the HOA's magic trick where, poof, my lawn gnomes become dollars out of my pocket. Tell me more about your plan to monetize my delightful decorations. I might even consider an art show featuring them. Oh wait, do we need to submit those plans to you first?" Laughter bubbled inside me as Samir could be heard snickering in the background, possibly recording the whole spectacle for what I imagined would be some award-winning documentary titled The Great HOA Follies. Gloria's face transformed from gusto to palpable annoyance, and I could practically feel the heat coming off her crisp white blouse. "Jordan, we don't have time for your games. This is serious." The thing about Gloria is that she acts like some sort of neighborhood panther, prowling around looking for any sign of behavior that could tarnish her reputation as Queen Bee. And here was I, standing in my living room, a playful and blind giant, ready for battle while holding court in my own realm of mischief. "Oh, darling Gloria," I drawled, relishing each syllable. "What will you do? Ban me from gnome ownership? Hold court over my flower selection next? I can't wait to flaunt my newly acquired black market gnome membership card around." The absurd nature of the situation nearly propelled me into an uncontrollable chuckle. Her laughably exaggerated reaction brought strange joy to my blind world. Was that a hint of frustrated fury seeping through her polished exterior? Speak the truth, Gloria. The standoff had morphed into an Olympic-level verbal sport where every jab warranted an even sillier retort. The tension in the air dripped with anticipation, crackling with amusement. I think we're nearing the climax here, folks. Will Gloria tame the wild beast, or will I reign victorious in the kingdom of overly embellished lawn ornaments? Suddenly, I was hit with inspiration. Perhaps this was my chance to expose the HOA's antics to the neighborhood. My fingers danced on my smart device, capturing the absurdity surrounding me while prioritizing the juicy bits. The pinky swearing against garden gnomes and hunting for non-compliant daisies was nothing short of marvelous. Maybe I could host a neighborhood gathering in HOA Awareness Week, where we would poke fun at the pretend authority figures who thought they deserved crowns. Before I could formulate such a grand scheme, Gloria raised her hand like a conductor about to silence a pesky orchestra of out-of-tune instruments. "This discussion isn't over, Mr. Marshall," she proclaimed dramatically, her tone dead serious. A name everyone else but herself would regard with contempt. "Your gnomes will be the least of your worries. We have our eyes on your entire property." And just like that, the curtain fell on the first act of comical chaos, woozy yet wanting more. But let me ask you, what would these self-proclaimed enforcers come up with next? What other absurd requests could they possibly fabricate in the name of their principles? One thing was for sure, I would be watching, even if I couldn't see. With the neighbors rallying behind me, it was about time we flipped this HOA charade on its overpriced head. Ready? Game on! As the front door creaked shut behind Gloria and her band of faux enforcers, I leaned back against my couch, excitement coursing through me like an adrenaline rush at a wrestling match. My mind raced with glorious visions, imaginations of a neighborhood block party, banners declaring, "Fight back against HOA overreach," fluttering in the wind, and the taste of sweet, sweet victory. Maybe I'd even hire a local band to perform a parody of "We Will Rock You," but replace the lyrics with something more fitting. "We will mock you." Oh, how I could hear the neighbors chortling at gnome-themed cocktails and contests to see who could create the most ridiculous faux violations on paper. I should rename my gnome collection to Garden Guardians, Heroes of Rebellion, I muttered to myself, chuckling gleefully. Before I could wrap my head around my impending HOA revolution, Samir snuck up on me, his bright laughter echoing off the walls. He flopped down on the couch beside me. "Oh, glorious partner in crime. Dude, I think you just single-handedly defeated an army of overzealous bureaucrats armed with lawn shame and bad taste. I mean, did you see Gloria's face? It was as if she had just swallowed a live goldfish." He was practically rolling on the floor. The laughter was infectious. I could feel the tension of the evening evaporating, leaving in its wake anticipation for the playful battle to come. As we plotted our next steps, filled with a sense of purpose far beyond mere landscaping, the room thrummed with the energy of an unyielding alliance against absurdity. Bouncing ideas off Samir and feeding off his good-natured banter, I began recording the genius gems spilling from our minds into my smartphone. How about we start creating little notice of violations for non-uniform plants? You know, fine people for having petunias instead of geraniums, or heaven forbid, mixing colors. My mind raced with the power this digital auditory log represented. I imagined the local news airing the recordings of gnomes being classified as gardens of inequity. Samir added a few zingers of his own, commenting, "You could label your garden unmarked gnome territory, warning others to remain within floral conformity, or risk the wrath of HOA." I could almost picture it, the headline. "Blind man leads neighborhood revolution against gnome oppression." As laughter erupted from us again, I realized this moment was a sneaky triumph that bared the golden glow of community. I wasn't alone in this fight. The very essence of neighborliness seemed to radiate through the walls. Upon reflecting, our little enclave was a tapestry made of quirky characters, from bunco enthusiasts who play by candlelight to the dude who sets up elaborate Halloween displays that could easily frighten a herd of llamas. Everyone felt the sting of Gloria and her peons of protocol. It would take more than her condescending gaze to rob us of the genuine laughter, warmth, and humor that defined this place. "How about a full-on protest, complete with signs?" I exclaimed, delightfully contemplating the hilarity that would ensue. Samir's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Oh yes, save the gnomes," can be the campaign slogan. Maybe we can get some cute coloring books printed. Gnome Heroes. Fight back against HOA tyranny. In the ensuing moments, concocting these plans felt like embarking on a magical quest against all things that prided themselves in being painfully monotonous. People would wake up to music pumping through the neighborhood, proclaiming the glories of individuality and creativity. Could you imagine Gloria forced to navigate a gauntlet of garden gnomes? Picturing her expression, aghast, as she swept through masses of cheerful misfits, had me nearly doubled over with glee. I found satisfaction in the notion that I was, without seeing, joining hands with my neighbors in rebellion against over-policing our own creativity. With each idea shared, our laughter grew, the walls of my home reverberating with a shared determination, bolstered by the sheer absurdity of what we were turning into reality. Still riding this wave of exhilaration, I began gathering various gadgets for our secret meeting the following evening. Whatever it would take to elevate this reaction to the right level of public outcry, I was prepared. I feverishly rifled through notes, store receipts, and even my collection of stickers celebrating every kind of flower imaginable. Glory and violence against conformity were blossoming anew. This was no longer simply a battle over gnomes. It was an outright charm offensive, a slew of smiles preparing to chase away the shadows of pretentiousness, trying to snuff out our colorful quirk. Before long, we would have everyone gathering their plants, gnomes, and yard art for our grand parade, the day of gnome reckoning. What do you think Gloria would say if she saw her pristine garden buried under confetti and joy? I winked at Samir, who was already snorting with laughter again. Probably something like, "You're all ruining the aesthetics." Samir shot back, wiping tears from his eyes. But who cares about aesthetics when we can have a gnome-tastic gala? My heart soared. We weren't just fighting an absurd battle. We were forging community, laughter, and a mission that couldn't be shrunk down to something as boring as decorum. Standing together, gnome-loving warriors of unpredictable wonder, we were ready to take on the might of HOA iron fists, feeling literally stronger. Call out the troops. Prepare for the greatest lawn revolution this intake of oxygen has ever seen, I announced, the plot bubbling happily beneath the surface. Each twist and turn delighted my soul, steadfastly confident that light would always triumph over the gloom of conformity. What further mischief would we devise together in this ludicrously entertaining tale? The next morning began like any other, or so I thought. But it didn't take long for the neighborhood chatter to reach a fever pitch, swirling around my home like a tornado of gossip. My trusty smart home device blared updates from the local news, its chirpy voice broadcasting headlines that seemed to sprout from an episode of Jerry Springer. Local HOA president allegedly hires fake enforcement team. It was laughable and fantastic. I could barely contain my delight as I, Jordan Marshall, blind but oh so aware, reclined in my chair, envisioning the glorious fallout as a group of faux enforcers became the star players in a farce of Shakespearean proportions. I could foresee the scene. Gloria at the next neighborhood watch meeting, flipping through her glossy agenda with panic dancing in her green eyes, trying to control the chaos that was completely out of her elite grasp. As I maneuvered around my cozy living room, the vibrations of mockery permeated through the air. My fellow neighbors were either laughing or shaking their heads in disbelief at their own blindsided compliance. Picture this: a rambling meeting on lawn decorum where residents wielded indignation as they recounted tales of the fake enforcers' ridiculous overreach. One neighbor, Ms. Jones, had reportedly challenged the team over her pink flamingo garden display, insisting they must have been blindfolded to enforce any rules at all. Her recounting gave me a chuckle, and I was thrilled to imagine it morphing into one of those legendary character sketches from classic literature. Gloria was now more than just a presumptuous HOA president. She was a caricature brimming with the absurdity of her own making, desperately trying to glue together the threads of normalcy in the heart of comedy. That evening we gathered, my fellow insurrectionists and I, to concoct our revolutionary plans. Samir had transformed my living room into our Operations Gnome Liberation headquarters, with sticky notes plastered against the walls illustrating our brilliant strategies. Okay, so will the 239th Amendment to the HOA Constitution that we're drafting cover the inherent right to gnome placement? He asked playfully, stifling laughter. My fingers danced around my smartphone, diligently transcribing our comedic yet effective game plan. Our creative ideas flowed like a tidal wave, washed over by sarcasm. We'd create a petition to have the uniformity clause of the HOA rules redefined to include any plant that provides joy is an essential community resource. The more jests we tossed around, the more ricochets of laughter bounced off the walls, a resounding chorus of rebellion echoing through our little fortress of creativity against Gloria's iron-fisted tyranny. As we drew closer to finalizing our plans, the anticipation charged the atmosphere. I called out for ideas on signage for our upcoming Day of Gnome Reckoning. How about a giant banner that says lawn art is not a crime? I threw in with gusto, picturing it unfurling over the street. Samir nodded eagerly, his golden eyes sparkling with excitement as he retorted, or maybe a gnome a day keeps the HOA away. Our collaboration was electric, like a spark igniting a forest of hilarity that no amount of Gloria's disdain could extinguish. We were a duo of delightful chaos, creating a powerful symphony of fun that resonated with every neighbor who joined our crusade. Each quirk added to our brigade liberated me further from the confines of societal conformity. However, nothing could quite prepare me for the coup de grace. Our local news channel caught wind of our antics and decided to cover our garden revolution. Just as we were about to wrap up for the night, I heard the encouraging hum of Samir's phone buzzing on the table. With eyes alight in disbelief, he exclaimed, "Dude, we've gone viral!" I faltered, exclaiming, "What? How does a blind guy's gnome collection overthrow an HOA? This is like a modern fairy tale." Easily, our plans were no longer confined to the sticky notes in my living room. They were rippling through the social media feeds of our community. Gloria would be the dream oppressor, while we somehow transitioned into rogue protest legends, armed with nothing more than smiles, garden gnomes, and a catchy hashtag. I felt like we were starring in a sitcom highlighting the butt end of absurdity. And just like that, the glee and excitement bounced back and forth like a roller coaster, surfing the thrilling highs of our taste of victory. Anticipation gripped the neighborhood like a passionate embrace, the forces of conformity fizzling out like a deflated balloon in a sea of runaway giggles. Our gnome-tastic gala had sparked interest that would turn our specter of humiliation into relentless hilarity. But it wasn't just about the garden decorations anymore. It was about each neighbor reclaiming their sense of individuality, their right to express joy in whatever form they choose. Laughter shot through the air, blending in perfect harmony with the screams of bad taste and absurd entitlement, reminding us that we were capable of so much more than mere conformist existence. How glorious it felt to be part of this zany squad of gnome defenders. Was it possible we could actually have a bright, bold stampede of artistic expression right in the face of authority? The gnome revolution was just getting started, just when I thought our momentum couldn't grow any more forceful than an avalanche fueled by laughter and garden gnomes. The universe introduced a twist even I couldn't have predicted. Not only were my neighbors rallying beside Samir and me in this absurd crusade, but we also had the entire community reinvigorated with a sense of comical rebellion. The sheer thrill sent twinkling electric currents through my fingertips as I scrolled through the delightful chaos on social media. I found tweets of defiance using our Gnome Revolution hashtag, and I could practically hear Gloria's blood pressure rising from her snug office chair at this very moment. The more Mr. Sunshine and I amplified our efforts, the more Gloria's perfect facade began to crack, and it was deliciously glorious. The whispers of gnome-tastic gala turned into proclamations that meandered through the cul-de-sac. Neighbors started brainstorming and adapting the event for maximum hilarity. "Let's have a best lawn accessory competition," someone cried out, and another chimed in with, "And we should have a gnome parade." My heart raced at the wild creativity seeping through our community. Each suggestion added a layer of anticipation, an undeniable shiver of merriment as we plotted. From an imaginary BBQ battle to garden karaoke performances, it became a showcase of absurd aspirations and an impromptu grasp at individual expression. Each idea spun like cotton candy in the globes of our minds, and I savored it all as if it were an intoxicating carnival. However, the pièce de résistance was yet to come, a comedic twist that would send Gloria screeching like a banshee trapped in a soap opera. One particularly audacious neighbor, Mrs. Loudermilk, who usually outdid herself with cliché "keep off the lawn" signs, decided to give Gloria a taste of her own medicine. She posted a sign on her property that read, "Caution, sparking imagination zone ahead." It became a badge of honor for everyone who dared to stand against the intolerable weight of unsolicited authority. As I cackled with approval, my smart home device chimed in with a reminder of Mrs. Loudermilk's annual barbecue. "Let's crash this melodramatic melodrama with gnome-flavored flair," I suggested, clapping my hands enthusiastically. The thought of gathering beneath my neighbor's flamingos, wearing outrageous gnome hats as our new statement pieces, made the absurdity feel utterly electrifying. And yet, all delightful revolutions attract unwelcome attention, particularly from those like Gloria, who wear entitlement like a crown. With panic inked across her face, she stormed around the neighborhood like a general barking orders to her misguided minions. I could picture her pressing her impeccably manicured fingers into her temples with frustration as those self-deluded, Ignorant enforcers of decorum and conformity finally understood they had meddled with the only thing worse than an angry mob. A blind man armed with smart technology. Gloria's micromanaging grip began to falter as she realized she couldn't silence our uproar. Perhaps she could crush us with fines and threats, but how many garden gnomes would she need to stack to stifle our imagination? As the night of the gala approached, I felt the pulse of excitement beat in unison with the thrum of my loyal allies who, like wildfire, refused to be snuffed out by unethical HOA practices or Gloria's comically pompous demeanor. Each time my smart device pinged with notifications of new participants, camera crews, and spontaneous wild gnome merchandise, a warm glow surged through my body, buoying my spirit like a balloon finally set free from a child's grasp. The anticipation built to fever pitch. It was exhilarating to know that somehow we were reshaping the narrative, a whimsical, unified protest against Gloria's reign of terror. "Just wait," I murmured, "until she lays eyes on our extravaganza." Then, while making the final preparations, a chilling thought sparked in my mind. What if Gloria retaliated with her own signature brand of vicious tyranny? I had already imagined her draconian email blasts, and the possibility of her emergency HOA meeting titled "Protecting Our Community from the Chaos of Lawn Art." I shrugged it off, though, reminding myself that every action bore consequences in the great cosmic game of absurdity we were playing. With a determined grin, I realized that her attempts to quell our chaotic camaraderie only solidified our community spirit. No amount of her entitlement-fueled theatrics would extinguish the light of our rebellious spark. As I reclined on my couch, feeling the shifting energies of excitement dance in the air, a swirling thought lit up my mind like confetti. Perhaps Gloria underestimated the power of laughter and individuality woven into our quirky tapestry of unity. Outrageously bold plans had surfaced under her authoritarian nose, turning our little neighborhood into the staging ground of an inside joke comedy that no tyrant could snuff out. I addressed my resilient band of misfits. Together we march into this garden revolution, and if Gloria's self-constructed throne crumbles under the weight of our extravagance, well, serves her darn right. The air crackled with laughter as our renewed community spirit soared higher, and I couldn't help but think, what's more inspiring than the thought of rising against absurdity with creative flair? Gloria may have thought she could craft her little utopia of conformity, but she hadn't counted on the explosive joy that freedom of expression could unleash. We were embarking on a brighter, bolder demonstration of individuality right under her well-coiffed nose. And I, a blind man with a vision clearer than ever, would see, or rather feel, every glorious moment of it. What truly remained to be seen was how our gnome-clad revolution would unravel before the HOA's iron hand. The night of the gnome-tastic gala approached with the subtle intensity of a kettle on the stove, bubbling and frothing over with excitement and energy. My smart home was abuzz with notifications, reminders, and, well, let's be real, a healthy dose of gnome memes that exploded onto our neighborhood chat. In a matter of days, we went from the oppressed underdogs under Gloria's iron grip to the reigning champions of creativity and rebellion. My fingers danced between touchscreens as I finalized the virtual guest list, making sure each entry was marked with a gnome emoji. Because why not? If we were going to transform our homes into an exhibition of whimsical chaos, then the least we could do was document it with gnome-filled flair. As I reclined into my trusty couch, which incidentally had turned into my operations center, Samir breezed in, a bag of popcorn awkwardly tucked under one arm. "Dude, you won't believe the madness outside," he exclaimed, practically vibrating with the thrill of it all. Apparently, neighbors had transformed their lawns into miniature gnome parks, complete with lights, and, get this, sound systems blaring, "We Are the Gnomes" covers. I couldn't help but laugh hysterically as I imagined Gloria's reaction to a solid lawn fiesta in broad daylight. Maybe an actual display of community spirit would send her off the rails. Who knew rage could be so entertaining? With all that gnome-induced chaos erupting around me, it became clear that the very air was charged with buoyancy, and every chuckle from my neighbors echoed the brilliance of our defiance. But just as the thrill peaked, my instincts tingled with that gnawing doubt. Surely Gloria would pull out her trump card, the landmine of HOA mayhem, and I could almost envision her whipping up some theatrical display of authority as if she were practicing for the Academy Awards. Besides, the last thing I wanted was for her to launch a surprise crisis meeting aimed at dismantling our grand gala. What if she tries to shut us down? I asked Samir, my voice cracking slightly, overshadowed by worried laughter. He waved his hand dismissively. "Dude, if she tries that, we turn it into a protest. Bring on the gnomes. With those words, I felt a renewed sense of determination swell in my chest. Even if the storm clouds of Gloria's plotting loomed, we had our weapons of humor and gnome hats. And goodness, that was a powerful combo. As we geared up that evening, I made sure my smart home was equipped with every available gadget. Flashy lights? Check. An impressive sound system pumping out gnome anthems? Double check. And let's not forget the real kicker. The surveillance cameras that would capture everything. Yes, everything. Gloria and her entourage might attempt to do to crush our whimsical jubilation. I was prepared for any shenanigans. I could just picture her trying to slip in a squad of sarcasm-infused frowners, each one armed with a cardboard "Stop the Gnomes" sign. Is this really 2023, Gloria? The mere thought of that villainous plot sent me into a fit of giggles. Everyone knew once they heard the music and saw the glittery chaos, there would be no turning back. At sundown, an unexpectedly jubilant crowd began to gather with gnome hats, bobbing up and down like buoyant little mushrooms. I listened, wide-eyed, as conversations exploded around me. Everyone was buzzing with a mix of laughter and defiance, trading stories about how Gloria had snuffed out their creativity in years past. Next, we need a gnome Olympics, complete with potato sack gnome relays, someone shouted between guffaws. I swear, I could feel my heart swell as I savored the camaraderie, the palpable sense of freedom wrapping around us like a warm gnome blanket. It was beautiful to witness this transformation. We weren't just neighbors standing arm in arm, we were warriors of whimsy, entrenched in a rebellion as charming as it was absurd. Then, almost as if invited by the hilarity, Gloria stormed into our courtyard with a face that could curdle milk. Her sharp green eyes darted around in horror, assessing our audacity in real time. "This is an absolute disgrace! How can you people allow this?" she barked, wielding her disgust like an artisan knife. I snickered under my breath. "Well, Gloria, here's a quick lesson in community spirit. Entitlement doesn't win battles when laughter is the weapon of choice." Samir and I exchanged a look, the kind that said, "Get out your popcorn, it's showtime." As the crowd began to giggle at her bewildered expression, I leaned back in my seat, ready to unveil my own small revolution. With a gentle nudge of my finger, I prompted my smart home device and played back the recordings, spinning the true tales of HOA harassment like a comedy reel just for her. The audio echoed like a bombshell amidst the chaos, each captured line of Gloria's infamous condescension ringing painfully honest in the air around us. "Can you believe I told that blind man to comply?" echoed through the speakers, while the crowd reacted melodramatically with gasps and fits of laughter. The feathered population of garden gnomes bore witness to the devastation of Gloria's authority crumbling like a cheap house of cards, and as her expression morphed from outrage to profound confusion, I had a hard time holding back my laughter. "Looks like the HOA has officially hit rock bottom," I exclaimed, pointing right at her incredulity. "How does it feel to watch your dreams of intimidation unravel in real time?" I relished the energy rippling through the crowd, who were now caught in the shared pleasure of our logical victory. The absurdity of their faked authority had been laid to bear, and we were winning! The chaos swirled with giggles, spontaneous cheers, and relieved exclamations, drowning out Gloria's pleas for order as she resigned on the spot. What a delightful way to exude gaslighting, I mused under my breath, and yet the air was thick with elation, a high-flying reminder of how absurd the quest for conformity can be when confronted with relentless creativity. Our garden revolution had bloomed, so here we were, victorious and brimming with laughter on a night the HOA would never forget. The beginning of a new era was upon us, where we would embrace our quirks, individuality, and, of course, the subtle art of faking none of it. What thunderous joy sparked from standing together against absurd authority. Thanks for sticking around with me through the chaos to the end. Want more high-stakes HOA drama? Check out our recent HOA clash with the video on the right, or let YouTube pick your next wild ride with the video on the left. Whichever way you go, buckle up. There's plenty more HOA insanity on the way. Tune in again for more HOA chaos.